So I'm going to start with my usual opening question. You guys have a real understanding of the customer experience landscape. What do you see as a primary difference? And again, I'm going to use that sweeping regionalisation in APAC, Australia and New Zealand compared to some of those more global markets. Do you think there's a real difference in region? And Brad, I'm going to come to you first on that, if that's okay.
Yeah, no. Hello, everybody. Brad Milne, Chief Operating Officer of Access 4. Lovely to be here. We are seeing some general differences across our global regions. For us, we're a SaaS cloud communications provider, as my brother just came up here and said, and I've never seen him wear a blue tie before, so it was a lovely picture. So we've recently acquired a business in the UK and deployed SaaSPOS into the UK market. A lot of our CX products are consumed via that platform, and we're definitely seeing a difference in the market from our local market to the UK market. For us, a little bit different to the rest of the panel, while we see ourselves as a traditional vendor from a SaaS point of view, we consume a lot of vendor-based products from a CX point of view, which are consumed via our SaaSPOS platform. And so for us, we're seeing a difference traditionally in our mid-market space here versus what it is in the UK. The size and scale of the market in that region versus what it is here are something that we're super excited about, and it is something that is genuinely different for us, and the scale of it creates so much different opportunities for us.
And that's partly a business demographic things. Any of the markets that we come to, generally the composition of the business within the markets makes a huge difference to your provision of services. Fiona, if you wouldn't mind a little bit of background on yourself and IPscape, that would be great.
Sure. Fiona Boyd, CEO of IPscape. We're an Australian CCaaS multi-channel provider. More recently, we actually developed and have started to launch a AI subsidiary called IPscape. We actually partner with both international and Australian telecommunications providers, and also through distribution partners such as Digger Data, and Jason Hall and Jack Morrison are here. So that is our sort of channel to market predominantly. And yeah, what else did you want to say?
Well, I was going to ask, just as a first point, key trends that maybe you think are unique to the region that
Sure.
you follow from a sort of global perspective. So any key trends that you think are unique to the region?
Yeah, look, I think for differences across regional markets, there are, as I think someone mentioned earlier, there are huge differences in the Asia market. Each country is completely different. But I think what we're seeing, and particularly as we've started to embrace AI, I think it's probably less about geography and more about digital maturity in markets, and also just the regulatory environment. And so in AI solutions, for example, Australia and Singapore, I see, will really sort of go a lot further more quickly. Cost of labor is high, and the regulation and the digital maturity in both those markets is quite high. In other markets in Asia, I think it's probably a bit less mature. But I think generally what will start to happen, I think you've made this point in your sort of earlier session, there's just a convergence, I think, of what customers are looking for. And things like automation and really that focus on customer experience, I think traverses across most geographic boundaries.
And I think one of the really interesting points you make there is in a lot of the Southeast Asian markets, something that we heard in research, a lot of the labour costs are so low that effectively it negates a requirement potentially for AI if you have a much lower labour cost. Alex, tell us a little about Telnyx and yourself, and any sort of key trends on the region, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Alex Sobin. I'm VP of International Sales at Telnyx. We're a company that helps businesses build AI voice assistants, and those assistants have real conversations and do real things because we have a integrated carrier network across the globe, alongside of our AI infrastructure where we actually host our models. We've got 2 points of presence in Australia for telephony, as well as a GPU in Sydney as well.
So a local presence key, obviously, within Australia.
Yeah, and I think the main thing for us when going and saying, hey, we want to enter a market like Australia, we want to have the pillars of data sovereignty embedded in that messaging. your telephony will be here on the continent. Your GPUs will be right next to them. Not only does that lead to better outcomes because you've got lower latency for those agents to truly respond quickly and feel lifelike, but you can tick those boxes whether you're going through the compliance process or going in front of a major enterprise and say, hey, everything's here. It's not going to leave the borders.
Well, actually, I'll come back to you on that point. One of the things, and you've seen from the research that we always try to segregate the findings based, obviously, on geographic basis, but also on the size of businesses, because those requirements differ dramatically depending on the size of business that you've got. So, Alex, maybe I'll come to you first on that. I'll come to each of you on it. How do you see requirements for customer, and I'm using customer experience as umbrella term, which might include formal contact center, but it also might include informal customer experience features. How do you see requirements differ, small businesses, medium businesses, large businesses? Nice broad question there for you.
Sure. I mean, I can tell you for sure how they don't differ. The expectations around uptime, the expectations around UX. So are your agents up all the time? Do they respond quickly? Do they sound like what they need to sound like? Those don't change regardless of where you're at. Where things begin to come in to really differentiate between the SMB, and by the way, every conversation I've had this week with local partners has said, Australia, you have to be focused on the SMB. The SMB's going to have fewer requirements than your government or your enterprise from maybe a security compliance standpoint, but the UX has to be amazing for any sort of category of buyer to be convinced that this is something they want to truly invest in. It's unlike in San Francisco or Silicon Valley, where you see the sort of tail wagging the dog, so to speak. So let's just adopt and ask questions later. Here is it culturally appropriate to adopt the technology? Does it make sense? If so, let's invest in it, and let's consider the compliance angles too.
There's two really interesting points there. So first of all, we talked about the demographics. So the demographics of the Australian market there are a higher proportion of smaller businesses than either, if I use a bias point, in either the UK or North America, for example. So that in terms of business demographics. But the second point you made in terms of uptime and reliability, you all hear those conversations in very large enterprise contact centers of thousands of users of, 1 minute of downtime costs X. But proportionally, it's the same for a small business. If you've got one person who handles customer inquiries and you're down, it's exactly the same sort of impact.
Yeah, effectively, if you're telling them I've got an offering that replaces the dispatcher for a healthcare clinic or something mission critical, it doesn't matter how big that organization is, the pain will be felt if that agent isn't performing.
Yeah. And Fiona, I'll come to you on the same question. How do you see the differences by business size, and how do you deal with that?
I mean, look, it's probably hard to generalize, I think, particularly when things are changing so rapidly. But for small organizations, usually they're looking for operational efficiencies, and they're looking for automation, and they're looking for, how they can get out to their market, a lot more quickly. For mid-sized organizations, they're really looking to scale. For larger organizations, there's a real requirement on integration and governance and security. But I would say that actually it's, as I said, it's hard to generalize because most customers you speak to are going to have a real requirement around all of those. So yeah, I think it's really being, and I think it's been said a few times today about being really clear about your customer and what they're looking for, and, having that real industry focus. But yeah, just being really tuned into the customer.
Do you think that cloud and SaaS and CCaaS is democratizing some of those feature function sets? Because we have seen for a very long time that the really high-end feature sets within contact centers were the domain of a very large enterprise that could afford them. But now, even with SaaS software, contact center is still the most price resilient of other softwares. We see 10x what you see from UCaaS. Do you think it's democratized some of those more what we'd have considered previously enterprise features?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I think the accessibility of technology, the cost of technology has come down. I think, there's a lot more choice available for customers.
Brad, I'll come to you on that. So different, and maybe you could comment after, obviously, the UK as well. What do you see in terms of the demands of different sizes of business?
So majority of our market here, as Alex was saying earlier, and a lot of vendors that enter this market would see it is, 75% of the business here is driven by SMB. So for us, it's a very strong driver within our business and the demands that our partners put on us. For that, I think the demands that, regardless of the size of business, what Alex was saying was correct. They all want uptime, security, compliance, etc. And I think that what we're doing in the market now is focusing predominantly on verticalized integrations into specific market segments, because we find that, like, for instance, on the legal side of things, verticalized across CCaaS, UCaaS, and all of our unified communications wraparound services is something that offers a point of difference for us within particular verticals. So I think that's something that we're super focused on too.
You perfectly segued into my follow-up, which was going to be, if we've looked at different sizes of business, how does it vary by different verticals? And you've talked about it there. So how easy is that to do? We saw, Matt and I showed some data before, 90% of businesses talk about vertical expertise. That means they've put something on the website that we deal with healthcare, but actually less than half have either developed anything bespoke, and only around a quarter have any dedicated staff. So it can't be that easy to create vertical solutions. Could you talk a little bit more about
that? Excuse me. So one thing I saw on the slide, which is pretty cool, that we're ahead of the curve, is only 8% of service providers see it as a market opportunity that they're getting into now. Being ahead of the game, I think, is super important for us. It's not easy, otherwise, everyone would be doing it. You've got multiple different vendors that you're trying to deal with across multiple different ecosystems. So last week we were at a Smokeball conference, and we've done a deep integration within Smokeball for the legal sector.
So Smokeball is in a specific line of business sector within legal and advisory.
So they run all the practice management systems for the legal side of the business, and are one of the fastest growing vendors in that space. So we've integrated multiple different platforms across our ecosystem into that, so that any calls or transcriptions pull straight into their practice management system, and then auto bill those calls associated to different timing across messaging too, and across different types of reporting. So that's the type of vertical that we're going after. And there's multiple other ones that we're doing now too. But I think the breadth of vendors that we have allows us to get into multiple different verticals rather than focusing on one horizontal one.
And effectively, you can use that vendor breadth in order to hit those. And I think that's a really interesting point. So if you look at particular vertical markets, and you mentioned legal there, but anyone who knows the automotive industry in either the UK or Australia, actually, there are about 3 different types of software that are line of business that the entire automotive sector uses. So if you have an active integration into those 3 particular line of business solutions, you therefore have access, in theory, to the entire market from an integration perspective. So I think that's a really interesting point. From the IPscape side of things, what do you do when it comes to sort of verticalizing your CX product?
So for example, in our AI applications, we've covered a range of different use cases, but probably 3 I'd call out is in retail, healthcare, and education. And so for one of our customers who had a real issue around manual order entry and needing to do a 24/7 solution, lots of issues with their supply, etc. And so we built an e-commerce integrated solution, which really has done that upfront caller ID verification. It checks inventory. It is sort of automated the entire purchase.
So previously those would have been pretty clunky, mundane, unautomated, manual processes that someone would have been doing.
So that was sort of, you asked before about democratization of solutions, and I think that's a really good example of where they've been able to actually really scale their business as a result of having this technology available to them.
The other thing I wanted to ask, you mentioned particular verticals there that you've done well, than the example in retail and healthcare. I was just wondering why you picked those verticals. Are those verticals that you're already having success in? what we found with vertical analysis is counterpart referrals are absolutely key. If you tend to do well in healthcare or retail, they speak to each other, and that referral base is incredibly important in vertical. So I was just wondering how you came about to
Yeah,
as
I
vertical.
think it's very much about the customer base we've developed through, well, either through directly or with partners, and getting that expertise across, every aspect of our organization. You mentioned automotive before. We actually have a number of automotive clients. The healthcare example is interesting. That's a Malaysia-based healthcare provider, and they had a real issue with being able to provide patient records and being able to actually provide that solution with all the regulatory requirements in healthcare. So that was really actually interesting for us as well. And then, yeah, education. We have a number of education clients, and this particular group was looking for the ability to handle lots of inbound calls, and again, just getting that sort of more focus on customer experience and being able to automate a lot of that process. So it's actually, for us, that's what we love. We love working with customers and really solving issues, solving problems, and yeah, helping our partners to do that as well.
I think that's a really key message. Matt talked this morning in our keynote about expertise. Leveraging your expertise and then expanding on it is one of the key lessons that I think is important. From a Telnyx perspective, but vertical specific bots, what's sort of the vertical strategy around your capability set?
Well, we're a platform, so we're vertical agnostic, so to speak, from our offering standpoint. It's our customers and our partners who bring the vertical expertise and then work with us to build out those operations. So I can't highlight one in specific, but I have plenty of stories of successes and failures.
But that's a really important point, isn't it? That you have to have an open platform that you can integrate into all of those other different vertical applications in order to make that even a possibility.
Yeah, for sure. I think recently I was talking to an e-commerce website, and their head of contact center, which I don't pretend to be any contact center expert, came in and said, "Hey, this is the third time we've tried to pilot a voice AI assistant in our contact center environment." Highlighted the various reasons, clearly articulated to me that now they've learned so much about what they want to achieve and the outcome they want to drive. It was this really tightly scoped project. He said, certain percentages of our calls are sunk costs no matter the outcome of the call. These are people who are calling into our call center, who are canceling a purchase or canceling a membership. Legally, we have to take the call. But the call center employees who typically sit in and take those calls quit at the highest attrition rates because they're depressed. They have to take 50,000 of these calls
From disgruntled customers. I mean, I worked in a contact center. I was particularly bad.
Yeah. And so he goes, "This is AI for us. This is exactly what we want. We want the first point of contact to be an agent. We know what the gaps are. We know how to build this thing. Just give me the platform. Give me what I need, and we'll get something going." And that was, a week ago, and we're piloting their solution this Thursday.
And that's another key. And anyone who knows the contact center industry or customer experience, regrettable churn within contact centers, it's one of the biggest problems. It's one of the highest levels of employee turnover within any of these technology sectors. So it's an absolutely key piece. I think you've perfectly segued into what you mentioned, an AI use case there. What I wanted to talk about, first of all, before we get on to some of those emerging bleeding edge AI use cases, because I really do think customer experience and contact center is at the forefront of AI. And part of the reason behind that is because often the most complicated problems that a business have are in customer handling, and therefore using new and emerging technology to solve those is potentially the best way of doing it. So I was going to ask a more broad question, and I'll actually come back to you. The evolution of AI and where we are now. Could you just talk a little bit about that, where it started for you, and then and where you think we're going?
Yeah.
Very broad question again.
I think, a year or two ago, you would talk to an AI and there would be about a 2-second, 3-second delay for it to respond to you. And it basically felt like an IVR. But then around the same
Dialogue flow built, old-fashioned IVR response call set of pre-programmed responses. Yeah.
Yeah, around the time that, for us at least, around the time that we began to see models like, Anthropic Sonnet come out, I think it was like 4.5, all of a sudden the task that you could assign an AI assistant to do began to look like real material work. And that's to me where it was like the kind of, oh man, moment at Telnyx, where these agents weren't just voices on the other side of the phone. They could MCP into a CRM, update a record and book a calendar and follow up and send you a text message and have this like whole experience with you in a very, very lifelike manner. And I think we're just beginning to scratch the surface on that. And we need to be, this is a new thing for everyone. We need to be open, I think, is the bottom line. Because no one here has 15 years of experience doing this. We need to be experimenters.
And if we did, we'd be the most valuable employee, because the AI skills shortage is a real thing. So that we'd be incredibly valuable if we did. But I think that's a really good point. In terms of you mentioned what do you do in terms of model? Are you model agnostic on the back? What do you do in terms of that? Because different models, large language wise, are good for different things.
We're flexible there, so you can bring your own model, or you can use one of the open source models. We have about 11 frontier models that we run on our GPUs spread across the globe. So kind of want to give people flexibility, because you're going to run in one customer who's like, I'd love to go with this cheaper open source model that's running on a GPU in Sydney that's good enough for me. And then you're going to run into clients who say, look, I don't care. You're never going to see our LLM. You're never going to touch our data. We never want you in on this. We'll exchange this over, webhook, and you can use everything else we can use of yours, but the LLM completely locked out.
Right.
So I think you got to be flexible there.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Brad, I wanted to come to you on that, because obviously you're seeing this from a different perspective. You've got vendors in your portfolio. Talk to me about how it developed and suddenly the AI products that you were able to sell through Access 4.
We're busy doing our national roadshows at the moment, and we're talking about this quite a lot. Like if you Google AI voice assistant, just in Sydney, you'll find 200 different options available. I think the core component, though, that we're talking about is the voice part. Where 2 years ago, everyone was talking about how voice is dead. And now all of a sudden the voice is sexy again. Everyone who is deploying an AI voice assistant, the underlying technology of that is having a good voice network to be able to run that particular
Latency is so important.
So we're seeing a lot of early adopters to that have previously failed because they didn't have the underlying technology from a voice point of view. And we're now seeing, people like Telnyx, we've got a very similar product where you can anchor your AI agents into our global voice network too. So we're seeing a lot of that type of demand now for our network, which is very different to what we thought we would see 2 years ago.
And I was going to ask, without commenting specifically, you've got multiple vendors within your portfolio. How do you choose which vendors go to which particular? Is it very much use case by use case basis based on the customer requirement, without obviously talking like specific vendors?
No, so now what we, Matt mentioned it earlier, so we have 21 products across our portfolio. It can become a little bit daunting, not only for our go-to-market team, but also for our partner community. We've now specified several hero products that our go-to-market team go to market with, along with our marketing activities and campaigns. And those hero products we've now used to start getting into our verticalized bundles, rather than, while we have a large set of products that allows us to get into different market segments, generally our hero products are the ones that we lead with.
Right, makes sense. A little bit about the evolution of AI from IPscape. When did you first start utilizing it, and where have you got to at the moment?
I mean, look, for us, it probably started in AI with call summarization, which is one of the first things we did. And we've been providing speech analytics solutions before that. So what we then did was we started experimenting with different AI solutions. We worked with a number of providers. We sort of settled on an infrastructure stack, which is a combination of OpenAI, 11 Labs, and a couple of other automation type components. And again, for us, it was very much about experimentation, getting the best, as you say, the latency was really important. The voices were really important. So we've used different providers and sort of settled on 11 Labs, which again, we will be agnostic because we think there'll be so much development in this space. But right now, that's our stack. And as I said, we started from an application perspective with call summarization and storing that data. We've got now some updated analytics, embedded components within the solution. And then from there, we started really developing those specific use cases that I mentioned earlier. So it's sort of been an evolution, and it's accelerated probably recently, but I think we're only at the tip of the iceberg at the moment. It's going to really sort of this year. And again, in conversations with customers, I think last year, at this Cavell conference, there was probably a bit of skepticism about AI.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think what's happened in the last year, and particularly in the last few months, I think this is the year where there'll be massive adoption, or at least, and I think someone said this earlier, partners need to have that conversation with customers, even if they're not yet ready. They want to know that the MSPs and others are actually there, thinking about how they can actually create value for their end customers through these types of solutions. And again, to the point earlier, there's so much technology available. It's about really equipping our partners to have those conversations and to really add value in terms of their end client conversations.
I want to come back to you on that, because that's obviously a key piece for service providers in the audience. I was going to sort of combine a couple of questions that we've got on the list here in terms of analytics. I was going to come to you on that. If you're a service provider, you've had a traditional voice business for quite a long time, and I am guilty of this as an analyst, and I've said this in a lot of conferences, where you see traditional revenue and margin streams deteriorating from a telco side, and I say, oh, go and sell contact center, go and sell CX, go and sell. It's not necessarily that easy. So what would be your tips from the sort of vendor side for providers who are looking to get into the CX world?
Get a Claude Code account with Anthropic, and then set up MCP servers with some of your favorite CX tools and start building. I think Telnyx a year ago, most of our developers had a Claude Code account. Today, every single employee has a Max account, and consistently we burn through all of those credits. I don't have a technical background whatsoever.
Development capability, just for anyone who is just developing those tools.
Just building, just vibe coding, building, taking ideas from calls you have with customers and then ideating on them quickly, putting them in front of a product team. I mean, like I said earlier, I think we kind of know what we want to sell to these customers and how we want to engage them. But now we're empowered by these tools to truly have be a real stakeholder, right? Like, you can go build, you can work with partners who are good for building.
Yeah, and I think that was something that wasn't possible previously. If you didn't have a coding background, it was completely impossible. Now you can type and code and refine pretty much on your own.
Yeah.
And Fiona, sort of use cases, I know that you've mentioned a couple. I'm really interested into IP. What are you looking at maybe slightly in the future in terms of the use cases for AI? Where do you think this is going to make real change?
In terms of industries, or?
Yeah, all across the board, specific use cases as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, there's the thing about AI solutions is it's very there's infinite possibilities, and I think I was going to sort of say before that one of the things about equipping partners to sell contact center solutions is it's been sort of in the past so complex, and the level of integration and all of the components that are required. I think with AI solutions, there's a much easier sell. A lot of the sort of solutions that can be provided through a typical contact center can be done through AI solutions. I mean, what we have done is being able to do a warm transfer between the traditional contact center platform and the AI solution, and then integrate to things like HubSpot and other components. So I would think that partners will be it'll be a lot easier for them to be able to provide these capabilities to end clients. And it's really about, when you say about the use cases, it's any requirement for focusing on customer experience, being able to provide those retail, solutions. In healthcare, I think it's huge. I mean, I'm sure we've all sort of had issues with healthcare, and I look at, the medical staff and what they have to go through. And, I think the application of technology at both a sort of a very profound and deep level, as well as sort of, for sort of more simple use cases, is huge. So I think, there's huge huge potential there.
And I think there's two really good examples there. Test and try, and then look at established things that work and roll them out further. And that is a really good example for partners. But from your perspective, what about helping partners sell something they might not be used to?
Yeah, I think something that Alex said earlier resonates with me. I think if you have a look at what AI was doing 6 months ago versus what it's doing now, the vendors who are adopting what Alex was talking about now with AI fully adopted throughout their entire dev cycle and business will be in 3 months' time the out and out winners. From a vendor point of view, what we're seeing is a lot of vendors are a little bit hesitant to adopt that type of ethos across their entire environment, and they will be the ones that lag behind within the next 3 to 6 months. It's just phenomenal, the rise and the rate that it's going at. And then, yeah, I think from a partner community or a customer journey point of view, we're still seeing, the lag effect of some of our partner community or vendor-based community offering those AI services in a very early stage. And the type of things that we're deploying within our business and our, internal contact center are very similar to what a lot of businesses want in terms of like CRM integrations, pop-ups for agents, sentiment-based analysis, so you know whether someone who's on that call is trending up or down from a happiness point of view. So those sort of things I think are, pretty generic now. They're broadly out there and being offered. But I think more importantly for us as a vendor and the vendors that we consume, we're looking definitely at what Alex is talking about. Yeah, are they adopting it as a vendor within their business? Because if they're not, then they're not the vendor of choice for us.
Yeah. So I think what we've tried to establish there is what's going on in the markets, what's happening right now. I wanted to use the sort of last 5-10 minutes to ask some big picture, blue sky questions that always interest me from a CX perspective. So the first one is agents. So according to the Cavell numbers, which are available if anyone's interested, 15 million contact center agents globally, a really significant proportion of those in Southeast Asia, a good few 100,000 of those in Australia and New Zealand as well. What do these technologies do to agent numbers in the future? Maybe short term, medium term. I don't know if anyone wants to come first on that. It's a slightly hard topic. I'll give you the Cavell side. We're not seeing the immediate drop off that maybe was forecast by some other analyst firms. So I'm just interested to what you think is going to happen to the human agents. Go ahead, Fiona, please.
I think that definitely in the short term, I think you're right. I don't think it's going to be much of an impact. I think what is happening is that organizations are looking to provide agentic AI solutions for, perhaps lower value transactions. And a couple of examples, we have financial services clients, and they have said to us, there is no way that we would want, agentic AI solutions handling things like financial hardship. And so that must go back to a human agent.
And that's a compassion-based requirement. The example that's always cited is you ring a funeral home, you're not going to want it to be an agentic AI system.
Absolutely.
Right, please go.
And so I think that, that ability to hand off between a human in the loop, as they say, and the agentic AI solution is really critical for, key interactions. And I think, again, in the short term, I actually think Brad said this, voice became a bit sort of not sexy. And, the call center was sort of seen as like the
cost center within a business. Yeah. How can we remove as much as possible? How can we obfuscate this? How can we stop people from calling in?
That's right. And I think, from a customer experience perspective, that was terrible. So, I actually worked in Ticketek in one of my previous roles, and they made a deliberate strategy to start really, driving down the contact center and, sort of putting more online. But from a customer experience perspective, it was terrible. And in fact, Ticketek actually lost a lot of market share to Ticketmaster, now Live Nation. And so I think organizations that really focus on that whole customer experience and using now agentic AI to actually, handle a lot of those interactions that can be done automatically, and then having their human agents handle more of the value-added transactions or the value-added services, I think is going to be critical. In the long term, I don't know. I'm not a crystal ball.
Unfortunately, that's my job as the analyst to guess at that. I was just trying to get as many tips as possible for where to put the forecast. But yeah,
actually, I think as is said, there are so many. AI is going to completely change job roles and industries and how we all operate. And the jobs of the future are going to be very different to what we have today. So, I prefer to look at it optimistically.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good. Alex, what do you think about the agent market?
I wouldn't quit my job to become an agent right now.
No.
I think the long-term prospects on that are not looking great from a raw numbers standpoint.
Yeah.
I think the way you phrased the question.
Yeah.
Have we hit peak human
Agents.
agent?
I think that is a fair
I
assumption.
think we may be at the peak. We may be plateauing for a while. I certainly don't think
We're going to see double the amount of
I
contact
don't think-
center agents.
I don't think my phone's going to be ringing super hard for people to pull me into being an in-person contact center agent, unless maybe you're right in the long run where there becomes some sort of concierge type value.
Almost the phrase they used in the States, which I've noticed, is the white glove
The white glove
service.
approach.
Yeah.
The white glove approach. So on net, maybe that keeps things a little bit even. Maybe
Who's to say AI won't be able to do that in the future better than we can? Anyway, but fair
I
point.
ran a POC with a food delivery app out of the Middle East, and sort of my conjecture going into it was like, this is not going to work the way they want it to. They set it up so that people could just call into these phone numbers and talk to agents to order food. And I was like, this is going to be like deflection. People are going to get pissed off. They're going to go back to the web. This is like backward. This is like a backward way of solving this problem, I guess, where they want to push the web. Turned out the order sizes began to increase on average, and the call durations went longer because ordinarily you call into these restaurants and it's like chaos in the background. You're yelling at your family, what do you want? Forget it. You're not getting that. All of a sudden you can waste someone's time and it doesn't feel like push it off. So I don't know. I didn't think I was going to be, I thought I was going to be right about that was going to be a failure. And then I was wrong. So.
Yeah, and I think to be completely transparent from the Cavell perspective, we have multiple different model trajectories that we have to work on this, and you judge them over a much shorter time period. Modeling on a 10-year basis is notoriously difficult. But agents, your partners sell seat licenses, you sell seat licenses. How do you sort of see that?
I mean, so the way we looked at it is that Cavell number of 15 million, and I think that while that number, I don't see it increasing exponentially to where it is now. I think it'll be enhanced with AI agents along with a human. I think that's the best way to look at it now. Where we're looking at growth is in that SMB market, and the way we've done that is recut our contact center solutions to be a concurrent based model rather than a per user based model. So our view on it is that if we want to attack that SMB based market, rather than buying per seat, which most SMBs can't afford, you could put the entire business on our contact center solution on a nominal fee, and that's how we're increasing our seat size across there. Our value on top of that is then all of the wraparound services we offer, our AI voice assistants on top of that. So that's where we can have a margin blend across the entire ecosystem we offer. But yeah, I think if you're selling just a per seat to a global contact center, it's going to become challenging over time.
One of the things, and I did have a question about pricing, but we've got 1 minute left, and I know that one of the value of these global markets at the moment is based on average cost of license times agents in market, which I don't think is applicable to any of these markets as we use consumption and token-based prices. I wanted to say massive thanks to all of our panelists. So if you could please give a round of applause to Brad from Access 4, Fiona from IPscape, and Alex. And so if you could excellently, thank you so much for leaving.